As is customary, ladies and gentlemen, the Trinidad and Tobago Defence Force will form a guard of honor for the ceremonial opening of the fourth session of the 10th Parliament of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Extensive rehearsals would have taken place at the Defence Force heliport, their respective barracks, and they're all set and ready to receive His Excellency on this occasion. The guard is commanded by Major Sheldon Dugan of the 1st Battalion Trinidad and Tobago Regiment.
And we should get a view of the Guard of Honor in just a few moments. They usually march out just after the sitting commences at 1:30 p.m. So we will head outside in just a few moments. So once again, our commentary team, myself, Jason Alcock, Sharon Pitt, and Granty Dick, we shall be with you for the duration of today's proceedings. This is the Parliament Channel on Parliament Radio 105.5 FM. If you want to contact us, our social media streams are available. You can send us a tweet. Our sign is at TT Parliament, and you can comment to us on Facebook as well, facebook.com/TT Parliament. We may, who knows, if we have a few moments, we may read one of your comments on air. You can ask questions about what you may be seeing on television, or any question that you may have about the ceremonial opening. Can't guarantee that we'll answer all of your questions, but we will certainly answer a few. So get tweeting, get Facebooking. We want to hear from you.
Well, it seems, Jason, as if the weather is kind to us for the moment. We're not having any downpours here in Port of Spain. But certainly the roads are still a bit damp, but nothing like, I think, last year's scene.
Yes, last year there was quite a bit of rain. But Grantley, you can confirm that no matter what the weather is like, the Guard of Honor will remain in place and they will do their duty no matter what.
There is a saying in the military that it does not rain in the army, it rains on the army. So that notwithstanding the clemency of the weather, the morale of the troops would continue to remain high, I assure you. And there the Guard of Honor is marching into position.
Indeed. And I know we will go into this in more detail when His Excellency inspects the Guard of Honor. But how large is the contingent usually for a Guard of Honor at a ceremony such as this?
The troops on parade comprise number 1 guard with 48 other ranks, a color party in which the president's color and the regimental color are carried, and then a number 2 guard comprising 48 other ranks. It gives you a total of 96 other ranks and commissioned officers.
I see.
As I said earlier on, the guard is commanded by Major Sheldon Dugan, and the guard officer is Second Lieutenant Martinez.
Yeah.
Important to the entire project is the guard warrant officer, in this case, warrant officer class 1, Tobit. The warrant officer Tobit is like the sort of chief technical officer who is responsible for putting all these fine details and the extensive arrangements in place for the Guard of Honor.
All right, so thank you very much. And as we said earlier, we will return to the Guard of Honor, who are now assembled outside of the Parliament chamber. We're just some 20 seconds away from 1:29, and so we go back to the chamber now, where the proceedings are set to begin in just a few seconds.
Well, Jason, I think for those who might just be tuning in, who maybe were abroad or not familiar with the new configuration where Parliament is and where the Guard of Honor is being formed, it is on the waterfront, beautiful waterfront of Port of Spain. And we're in Tower D, and it's a different kind of atmosphere that you would get, because it's not the same kind of atmosphere that you would have had at Woodford Square, where the people, the crowd would be much closer to the Guard of Honor, so that's where we are. We're at the waterfront, and you'd have this sight of traffic heading
background.
eastbound in the
Yes.
background.
East and west, yes.
Right, east and west, because it's now become a two-way on that side.
Yes, the facility.
And then we have the whole of that westbound section
All right.
for the Guard of Honor.
For the Guard of Honor. It is 1:30 p.m. and so this time we will go back to Parliament Chamber. What times are in fact set to enter the chamber, so we expect the presiding officers will be entering quite shortly. The presiding officers will enter, and the first thing on the agenda, we take you now over to the chamber for the proceeding.
A proclamation by His Excellency Anthony Thomas Aquinas Carmona, SC, President and Commander-in-Chief of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Whereas it is provided by subsection 1 of Section 67 of the Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago that each session of Parliament shall be held at such place within Trinidad and Tobago and shall commence at such time as the President may by proclamation appoint. Now, therefore, I, Anthony Thomas Aquinas Carmona, President as aforesaid, do hereby appoint Tower D, Port of Spain International Waterfront Center, 1A Wrightson Road, Port of Spain, Trinidad, as the place at which the fourth session of the 10th Parliament of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago shall be held, and 1:30 p.m. on Friday, the 2nd day of August 2013, as the time at which the said session shall commence. Given under my hand and the seal of the President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago at the office of the President, St. Anne's, this 28th day of June 2013.
Shall we pray? Almighty God, we give thanks to you, the creator of the universe, and humbly beseech you to direct and prosper the deliberations of the members of this house here assembled for the advancement of your glory and the trust and welfare of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Grant that peace and happiness, truth and justice may be established among us for all generations. Amen.
Announcements by the Speaker.
Honorable members, I have received communication and correspondence from the Chief Election Officer dated July the 30th, 2013, which read as follows. Honorable Wade Mark, Speaker of the House of Representatives. Honorable Speaker, re Chaguanas West, by-election 2013. Further to my letter dated the 29th instant, to your good self, on the above subject, and pursuant to the Election Rule 108, 5B, Roman 1, of the Representation of the People Act, Chapter 201, I wish to confirm the result of the by-election held on Monday, 29th July 2013, namely that Mr. Jack Austin Warner is the candidate elected to represent the electoral district of Chaguanas West in the House of Representatives. Yours faithfully, Mr. Ramesh Nanan, Acting Chief Election Officer, Elections and Boundaries Commission. I now invite the duly elected member for Chaguanas West to take the oath of allegiance. Could we all stand?
I, Jack Austin Warner, having been elected a member of Parliament, do swear by Almighty God that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I am about to enter.
You may have your seats. Honorable members, I have received communication from the Honorable Anil Roberts, Member of Parliament for Dabadi O'Meara, who is out of the country and has asked to be excused from sittings of the House during the period July the 29th to August the 12th, 2013. May I seek your indulgence by being silent. The Honorable Roger Samuel, Member of Parliament for Arima, and Ms. Alicia Hospitalis, Member of Parliament for Aruka Maloney, have asked to be excused from today's sitting of the House. The leave which the members seek is granted. Honorable members, the President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago desires to address all members of Parliament. This sitting is now suspended.
Proceedings of the House of Representatives have been suspended. Of course, Mr. Jack Warner would have taken the oath of office as the duly elected member for Chaguanas West. And Sharon, I think you
very naturally dressed.
The sartorial elegance
that's
of Mr. Warner,
with,
you called it
interest,
correctly.
With interest, a three-piece suit. Green is the color, and that statement is being made without saying a word. So
Okay.
he was shaking hands all around.
We're going over to the Senate now because there are more persons to be sworn.
I, Dineshwar Mahavir, having been appointed a Member of Parliament, do swear by the Bhagavad Gita that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law, and will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I am about to enter.
Office. Dr. Mahabir, of course, is an economist, wealth of experience.
I, Hugh Russell Ian Roach, having been appointed a Member of Parliament, do swear by Almighty God that I will bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago, will uphold the Constitution and the law. I will conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago upon which I am about to enter.
Of the Senate upon the conclusion of the live broadcast today. So then you'll have the opportunity to see the oaths taken by each of the independent senators who would have been sworn in. The members, as is the custom, being introduced to the leaders of the respective benches. They will then take their seats in the chamber, following which the President of the Senate is expected to make the same announcement that was made by the Speaker of the House, and suspend the sitting and await the arrival of their Excellencies.
And Jason, there has been some buzz on the media sites concerning the appointment of these 4 senators. They're all male, and there has been some talk that perhaps female should have been included.
Honourable Senators, His Excellency the President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago desires to address all members of Parliament assembled together. This sitting is now suspended.
Okay, so the Senate has suspended its proceedings, just as the House of Representatives. So I didn't want to cut you off, Sharon. It's just that the President of the Senate was making the announcement. So I'll take you up on it. 2 of the new. President of the Senate, there is a process in how they are introduced, so to speak, at a function such as this, where the Chief of Protocol will present the presiding officer to their excellencies, or to His Excellency when he arrives. So we'll be sure to look out for that in just a few moments. The carded arrival time for His Excellency was in fact 1:55 p.m.
1:45.
It was in fact 1:55 because taking into account the fact that four senators were to be sworn in. But I think now that the proceedings have in fact caught up in time, the senators were sworn in good time. Then just a few moments before the 1:55 time, he will in fact arrive at Tower D.
The guard of honor is already drawn up on the westbound lane of Wrightson Road, facing Tower D, the waterfront complex. His Excellency, upon his arrival, in fact, their Excellencies, when they would have arrived, will alight, and the Chief of Protocol will introduce the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House to their Excellencies. After the exchange of greetings, the Speaker of the House will present the Chief of Defense Staff to His Excellency the President as follows. Your Excellency, I wish to present the Chief of Defense Staff who will escort you to the saluting days.
And following this, they will in fact proceed along the red carpet to the saluting days, where Grantley, remind me of the name, I'm having a senior moment here, the gentleman who is in charge of the proceedings.
The Guard Commander.
Guard
Commander Major Dougal
will in fact invite His Excellency to inspect the Guard of Honor.
Well, while we have a couple minutes, perhaps the question might be asked by our listeners and viewers. When do you have these ceremonial guards of honor on show? Is it just for something like this?
In fact, guards of honor are drawn up usually on major ceremonial occasions, like the ceremonial opening of Parliament, a state visit, a foreign dignitary, and occasions like the ceremonial opening of the High Court.
His Excellency is expected from what is normally the westbound lane of Wrightson Road. He will make his way there accompanied by members of the mounted branch. And so with our crane camera, we should be able to pick up the procession in just a few moments' time. It's probably a good time to tell you that we would welcome your comments, your online comments. Tweet via Twitter. Our sign is @TTParliament. And go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/TTParliament, and leave a message. We want to hear from you. So the members of the Senate are making their way into the chamber, greeting their colleagues on both sides of the aisle. No doubt a few handshakes for one particular gentleman dressed in green. Not calling any names.
Well, I'm looking to see if he's the only one in green, apart from a female, of course. So it's very easy to pick him out. The first sitting of the fourth session of the 10th Parliament, and sometimes we forget that the business of the people, the legislative agenda, is paramount. The last session, Jason, I know quite a bit of work was done.
Yes, the session that was just concluded, there were 37 sittings of the House of Representatives and 28 sittings of the Senate. Some 26 bills were introduced, 21 in the House of Representatives and 5 in the Senate. And during that period, some 16 acts were passed. So quite a bit of work done during that time. It's just about average. I think there was just one bill less than the previous session. The previous session was something of a record breaker in that it was during the previous session, not the third session, but the second, where we had the longest sitting ever in the history of the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago, if I recall, some 27 or 28 hours during a motion of no confidence, I believe.
Well, the staff must have been quite worn out after that. But we know that rain or shine, the work must be done. And speaking of that, for our listeners who are not privy to the visuals that we're getting, it's the rain here in Port of Spain. The umbrellas are out.
Indeed, provisions were in fact made for this, and umbrellas are provided to the procession of members of the judiciary, led of course by Chief Justice Ivor Archie, on screen now exiting to the left, and he's followed by the members of the judiciary who will take their place in the chamber quite shortly. So a lot of preparation would have led to being ready for any circumstance, not the least of which would include the weather.
Well, if they had arrived 5 minutes earlier, they would have escaped that. But as you say, it's still a very nice sight to see them come in with their robes, and it certainly adds to that flavor of this being a very important occasion in our country's parliamentary life.
Indeed, it adds to the ceremony. As a matter of fact, the robes that are worn by our presiding officers are ceremonial robes. They're usually worn on an occasion such as this. They are tinged in gold, and this is as opposed to the robes that they would usually wear at sittings of the House of Representatives that are less ornate, but nonetheless quite
still quite elaborate.
Still quite elaborate. Thank you.
And they are inside now. They're coming through the passageway.
The members of judiciary entering the Parliament chamber. Space is usually reserved for members of the judiciary alone. Certainly in the Red House, that was quite distinguishable because there were barriers physically in the chamber between the front and back rows. That may still be the case, but I know that the room, the Parliament chamber as it currently exists, is certainly much smaller than the Red House. And to those of us who are accustomed to ceremonial openings in the Red House, while this building is modern and it is well equipped, for me, and call me a bit sentimental, there's something that is just not the same as being
I agree.
Under that
beautiful
ceiling.
Yes, that beautiful dome ceiling.
I guess the gesso work that was done.
And maybe the bones of the ancestors. We just found some.
Correct. Underneath.
Could have imbued the atmosphere with that feeling too.
There's an old saying among Parliament staff that the building was in fact haunted. Sometimes late at night you'd hear doors slamming and there's nobody there. And now I think we have a reason why. They were in fact
and they were trying to get out.
So the members of judiciary are here. Members of the House of Representatives and Senate are here. And we're just 2 minutes away from the expected time of their excellencies at 1:55. This is quite an unusual occasion. I guess not unusual, but the fact that you have the head of state, the head of the judiciary, the head of the three arms of government, if you will, the head of government, head of the judiciary, and head of the country, and head of the legislature, really, because His Excellency is in fact the head of the legislature, all attending one ceremony at the same time. This is one of the few occasions where that takes place, blending again to the significance of the ceremony.
There have been many references to the fact that our fifth president is a young man. He has a young family, and often we look at, say, the United States, where we have President Barack Obama breaking many barriers, and the First Lady as well in the US has done the same, and I think there's a lot of interest to see how this family conducts itself and the business that they're about. Often references, of course, fortunately or unfortunately, to fashion statements and all sorts of things. A lot showing too that, and I agree, that if you must have examples set from the top, and that this president certainly has, through example, shown the importance that he places on family. So we expect to see the family arriving shortly, and when that happens, we will be following very closely as there's a sharing away of Her Excellency. She will be going into the chamber with the children also being taken to another area, and the president being led to the saluting days.
Yes.
Their Excellencies would by this time have departed the President's house, the long circular, and is no doubt in the area of Melbourne, in the corner of Melbourne and Duke Streets, where His Excellency would be joined by the mounted escort, which would be formed up facing Wrightson Road, awaiting His Excellency.
That's right. That's right.
I know folks are very proud of our mounted escort. They always inspire a bit of awe. It must be a special honor to be part of the mounted escort.
Absolutely. My information is that officers who join the cavalry, the police mounted branch, stay the entire career in that particular section.
And the horses, are they well treated after they retire? What happens to them?
I can't comment with any certainty on that.
Okay. Let's hope it's not glue.
So we're just awaiting the arrival of their Excellencies. No doubt the presiding officers will no doubt be on their way outside to meet them, and following which the proceedings will continue. The procession will go to the saluting days, and His Excellency will inspect the guard of honor. This is Parliament Radio 105.5 FM, the Parliament channel. And those of you joining us via the World Wide Web, www.ttparliament.org. Members of our commentary team, once again, Jason Elcock, Sharon Pitt, and Grantley Dick.
Upon their Excellency's arrival at the Waterfront Complex, they will be received by the President of the Senate, the Honorable Senator, the Honorable Timothy Hammer-Smith, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, the Honorable Wade Mark, the Chief of Defence Staff, Major General Kenrick Maharaj, and the Chief of Protocol, Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
I've often heard it said that really, do we need the pomp and ceremony of this type of occasion? And I always say that, especially for the young, especially for those who celebrate a collective memory, these are the occasions that reinforce the beliefs of a society. So for those who hold fast to the importance of something like a parliamentary democracy, we must have these signposts, so to speak, of these events, these occasions, and this is a classic example of that. You have a ceremonial opening, you have people dress up, you have a sort of signpost that says this is something that we mark with pride. And I think so far over the years it has been something that reinforces that acceptance and support of the parliamentary democracy that we have. Whether or not after all the consultations are held and we still have a bicameral parliament, that's neither here nor there to this moment, in the sense that once people are reminded of the importance of what we have, same way I say that, you celebrate Mother's Day. Yes, every day should be Mother's Day, but there comes the time when you pull all those feelings together.
To those of you who are viewing us on television or on the internet, their Excellencies have in fact arrived, and
His Excellency, he has just been presented to the Chief of Defence Staff. In fact, the Chief of Defence Staff has just been presented to His Excellency, the President, and is making his way now to the saluting days.
We just got a glimpse of the children heading in another direction.
So
trumpeters.
this is your forum. The floor is open. To
Yes,
explain.
trumpeters of the Trinidad and Tobago Regiment. The song The Fanfare as His Excellency, accompanied by the Chief of Defence Staff, and followed by the aide de camp to His Excellency the President, and the aide to the Chief of Defence Staff, as they proceed to the salute in this. Her Excellency, Master Christian, Miss Anura, and Mrs. Singh, accompanied by the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives, and followed by the Chief of Protocol. And other officials will also proceed to their positions behind the salute in this. His Excellency will now receive a presidential salute.
Your Excellency, the Guard of Honor in commemoration of the ceremonial opening of the fourth session of Parliament of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago is formed up with Venus Fix and await the inspection. So please. Excellency.
It's certainly not a case of the president looking at someone and saying, "Listen, your boots aren't tidy enough. Your shirt is ruffled." What is the significance of the inspection? Well, it lends itself to that sort of.
His Excellency, as you know, is Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, and whenever his troops are drawn up in any public forum, especially one like this, it is considered good form and protocol for His Excellency to inspect his troops on parade. They are in fact his troops as Commander-in-Chief.
Grantley, I was just picking up the music and it sounded like a portrait of Trinidad. Is there any rule as to the type of music that should be played?
Not as far as I'm aware, but on most occasions, the opportunity is taken to highlight local music or to play a particular piece that would lend to the occasion. I have not heard the piece, but if in fact it's Portrait of Trinidad, I imagine it's considered very appropriate in the circumstances.
Well, I certainly approve, but the inspection that continues, just following on from Jason's point, I know that the officers and the rank, the various people on the parade are very proud of their attire.
Yes, a ceremonial dress, number one dress, a ceremonial dress that would be used on this particular occasion. The inspection now ended. The Guard Commander will request leave of His Excellency to carry on with the Guard.
And we see His Excellency the President leaving the area accompanied by the House Speaker and the President of the Senate following. All smiles.
Indeed, led by the Marshal of the Parliament and the Assistant Marshal. They will now make their way into a waiting room. They won't go directly to the chamber, but they will go to a room where they will stay for just a few moments, allowing Her Excellency and the children to enter the chamber first, and the members of everyone present, we expect that they will stand at that point in time. Usually it's done with fanfare. And just a few moments afterwards, the procession, led by His Excellency and the Speaker of the House and President of the Senate, they will then make their way to the chamber, also to fanfare, at which point we shall begin the proceedings. We'll have prayers by several different faiths, and His Excellency will make his address. Do you want to hazard a guess as to the topic that His Excellency may...
Well, he's such a people person. I think he would have listened to, the feelings on the ground, and I suspect that he will talk about some of the issues facing the population, how they feel, and how our parliamentarians should be addressing that. I think it will be a wide-ranging one. As the camera goes back into the chamber and we see the justices, we're reminded that one justice is not with us, the recent passing of Justice Wendell Kangaloo, and as has been mentioned on many sites, he will be missed. He will be missed from this particular occasion. So we look forward to it. I hear folks talking about this particular throne speech, so to speak, will be a game changer. So I'm rather interested to hear how that will be a game changer and what are the topics. But I should say that I'm also from South, from Faizabad. I have had the pleasure of knowing His Excellency for many years. Haven't yet had a chance to congratulate him, but I know he is the type of person who can parlay what is going on the ground and will speak in a way that everyone will be able to understand.
In fact, the procession to the chamber will form up and proceed in the following order. The Marshal of the Parliament, and in his wake would be the President of the Senate, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, and bringing up the rear would be His Excellency the President, followed by his aide-de-camp and the security officer. This would be the procession as they make their way into the Parliament chamber. We now see the Guard of Honor breaking off, and they will rest in a particular area while His Excellency is attending to matters in the chamber, and by prior signal they will then reform ranks onto the parade square in order to give His Excellency the final presidential salute before he departs.
And what a splendid occasion it is, and they look wonderful. We could see the flags.
The presidential flag, the presidential color, and the regimental color.
The first sitting of the fourth session of the 10th Parliament. It's that ceremonial opening.
To those persons who may not know what that means, Trinidad and Tobago became a republic in 1976. And since that time, we've had 10 general elections. Each time you hold a general election and start a parliament, you raise the number by one. And so this would be the 10th Republican parliament. Prior to republicanism, we would have had 3 independent parliaments between 1962 and 1976. Without wanting to go through all of the years, because a parliament usually lasts 5 years, and that was the case up until 1995, when the parliament lasted 3 years, 91 to 95. We had a 5-year term, 95 to 2000, which was the 5th. And then we had quite a bit of an anomaly. We had a 1-year parliament, which was in 2001, which led to the 7th parliament, where the House failed to elect a speaker, and that parliament didn't get off the ground really which led to the 8th Parliament between 2002 2007, and the 9th Parliament, which would have been 2007 to 2010, which itself was 2.5 to 3 years, and now we're in the 10th, which would have started in 2010. So just a bit of trivia, a bit of information on what 10th Parliament means. It really is the 10th Parliament of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, or the 10th Republican Parliament. Of course, a Parliament is divided for purposes of work into sessions, and the sessions by practice usually don't exceed 1 year. And so we are now into the 4th, having completed 3 years of work. We're now into the 4th session of work. Any work that was outstanding in the 3rd Parliament that was not done to completion, bills, for example, would have lapsed, and any such bill would have to be reintroduced into the 4th session in order to begin again. It's a sort of way of, to quote men and gods, to clean the AGN stables, as it were, and start afresh and start anew. So new beginnings, new start, new president, first speech. Just a few moments.
Well, that was very informative, Jason. I must say that, sometimes we need to be reminded, even those of us who've been in this for many years, but as we looked in the chamber, and as we're seeing in the chamber, and searching for a sight of the MP for San Fernando East, there's no sign of him.
I think he was granted leave for 42 days some time ago, and I don't think that has elapsed as yet. And so I too, I have not seen him in the chamber. I don't think that he will be here today. But certainly most of the members are here. Earlier in the proceedings, the Speaker granted leave of absence to 3 members.
Anna Roberts, Alicia
Mr.
Hospitalis,
and Mr. Roger Samuel. So out of 42, we'll have 38 of the 42 members of the House, and I say 42 because the Speaker of the House is in fact a member of the House, and so we have a 42-member House of Representatives.
The Prime Minister is wearing African garb today. Donna Cox, MP Donna Cox, is also wearing African garb.
Yeah, there are 3 or 4 persons. I want to think that the person that we're seeing in the blue at the back may very well be Vanilla Allen Toppin.
Okay.
But I'm not sure. I didn't see her up close. It's just where she usually sits. I think that may be her. And so all of the invited guests are here. We have former presiding officers, some former members of Parliament, representatives of the Tobago House of Assembly, members of the Diplomatic Corps. Usually quite a large turnout. I think our guest list, maybe including members of Parliament, maybe somewhere in the upper 200s or thereabouts.
If there's any occasion that they should be here, it would be today. I really like to stress that these are the occasions where we recommit and need to show the commitment. So that's very good news that so many are here.
Indeed it is. I can't help but do comparisons. Of course, the chamber in the Red House can hold significantly more persons than the parliamentary chamber here at Tower D. So the numbers would have been greater at that location. Her Excellency is just about to enter the chamber, and so we should see the members rise when she enters, just a few seconds away.
His Excellency's arrival will be announced by a fanfare of trumpets by trumpeters from the Trinidad and Tobago Regiment Band. On arrival in the chamber, His Excellency the President will bow to the right and then to the left of the House. His Excellency will then address members of both Houses of Parliament assembled together.
And it's well worth mentioning that many of these moves have been choreographed over many, many years. We follow the Westminster system, and you'd see similar moves, the bowing, the placement, if you went to the Houses of Parliament in the UK.
it's part of the civility that accompanies legislatures. Certainly those that have gotten their history from the United Kingdom. A lot is made about the distance between members on the government and opposition sides. Have you ever heard it said that they're 2 sword lengths apart? It's a distance where they cannot do harm to one another physically if they were wearing swords. Of course, the weapons of Parliament, as the name suggests, Parliament, for those of you who do French, means to speak. The weapons are words, and words are the weapons used now. And 2 sword lengths, 2 sword lengths is of no significance when it comes to words, I imagine. But it's just some of the law and some of the history that forms parliaments of this nature.
Of this nature, because often we hear of news reports. I think there was one just the other day where Taiwan or somewhere like that, people are always coming to blows.
Oh yeah, blows. Yeah.
So their weapons include fists.
For many years, I would lecture to students or speak to students who come to visit the parliament and ask them, what do you think about our members of parliament? Do they behave well? And they would laugh and they say, no, we don't think they behave well. But then I would make some comparisons. I mean, our members of parliament are extremely well behaved vis-a-vis some of the things that take place in other legislatures, and I'll continue to say that.
And it puts on the spot someone like the Marshal of Parliament, who in fact the predecessors of the present Marshal of Parliament used to be the Speaker, used to be the Sergeant at Arms, and in the British system, the UK system, they still carry the position of Sergeant at Arms. But here we have changes to that of Marshal of the Parliament, who is responsible for order and so on, guided by the Speaker and the President of the Senate.
Let me put you on the spot, Grantley. Did you ever have to put anybody out of the chamber under instructions from the Speaker? I don't recall. That Parliament was a particularly fiery one.
Fiery Parliament, and I recall having to carry out certain instructions of the Speaker at the time.
Well said.
Well, when we talk about the accoutrement of, say, the Parliament, I'm always fascinated by the mace and some of the other things. We hope to see that shortly. As a former marshal, what feelings are evoked in you when you see the mace?
I'm told that the mace, and I verily believe that the mace, in fact, represents order, and a city is only properly constituted when the mace is in position in the House, either in the House of Representatives or in the Senate. In fact, I received very, very strict instructions on that when I came to the Parliament in 1999.
The mace, of course, is a symbol of the authority
yes,
of the House, and is carried in by the Marshal at the start of each sitting. So let's, we're just getting, you won't be able to see it on television as yet, but the procession is in fact making its way to the chamber, and we hear in the background the fanfare. So let's go over to the chamber for the proceedings, which lead to the address by His Excellency the President.
Trumpeters from the Trinidad and Tobago Regiment Band sounding a fanfare.
His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Anthony Thomas Aquinas Carmona, SC.
Almighty God, we thank you that we can come here at this time. We ask you to bless our President, our Prime Minister, and all members of Parliament and our leaders of this nation. Give them your wisdom so that the decisions they make in these chambers may be according to your will and the fulfilling of your purposes. Help them to work towards a sense of justice, a sense of peace, a sense of righteousness, so that your will may be done and your people may be served through to our Lord and Master. Amen.
Om Burbua Tet Savitur Varenium Bargo Devasya Dhimahi Deo Yona Prachodaya. O Supreme Father, the light of all lights, we seek your divine blessings upon this gathering here this afternoon. You are the merciful, the most loving, the supreme protector and guide. We ask your divine blessings here this afternoon on this, the sitting of Parliament. Dear God, may your light and might surround each and every one of us to guide and protect us. We ask your blessings on this sitting and for the rest of the year. That may you continue to be with us to guide all members of Parliament and senators. Touch their hearts and minds. That all the discussions and deliberations will bear fruit for the benefit of beautiful Trinidad and Tobago. We especially seek your blessings this afternoon upon His Excellency the President and his family, the Speaker of the House, the President of the Senate and their families. We ask you to bless all members of Parliament, our Honourable Prime Minister, senators, and all who have gathered here. Continue to guide and bless each and every one of us. Lead us onto the straight path, so that our beautiful country will continue to be the radiant country of peace, love, and harmony. May your peace and love be with us, now and always. We thank you.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. O Almighty God, O Supreme Master, we pray this afternoon for our President, the Head of State, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, the President of the Senate, the Prime Minister, all government ministers and members of Parliament. O Almighty God, we pray that you guide them in all the endeavors that are undertaken. Disturb us, Lord, when we are too well pleased with ourselves, when our dreams have come true because we have dreamed too little, when we arrive safely because we sailed too close to the shore. Disturb us, Lord, when, with the abundance of things we possess, we have lost our thirst for the waters of life. Having fallen in love with life, we have ceased to dream of eternity, and in our efforts to build a new earth, we have allowed our vision of the new heaven to dim. Disturb us, Lord, to dare more boldly to venture on wider seas where storm will show your mastery. When losing sight of land, we shall find the stars. We ask you to push back the horizon of our hopes and to push us in the future in strength, courage, hope, and love. O Almighty God, O Supreme Master, we pray for all members of Parliament to get together in common understanding, to solve our country, to save our country, and take it into its right direction. In your holy name we pray. Please accept our prayer.
O Almighty God, we thank you for the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. We thank you for the Parliament, the center of civil government. We ask that you stretch your hand of mercy, goodness, kindness, and peace upon this august chamber, the scene of great events where mighty decisions are made that change the lives of men within the boundaries of this nation and beyond. Give eternal wisdom in these deliberations. May every conclusion reached find approval with thee, and may the men and women that serve here give glory and honor to your everlasting name, now and forever and ever. Peace.
Honorable Prime Minister, Honorable Chief Justice, President of the Senate, Speaker of the House of Representatives, Honorable Leader of the Opposition, other members of the Upper and Lower House of Parliament, with a warm welcome to the 4 newly appointed senators and the member for Chaguanas West. Specially invited guests, representatives of the media, other distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon to you all. The ceremonial opening of the 4th session of the 10th Parliament of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago affords me, as Head of Parliament, the opportunity to share with you, honorable members, issues vital in realizing the vision of good governance to which we must all aspire. As a parliamentary democracy, the Parliament is the vehicle by which we, the citizens, govern ourselves through both elected and unelected representatives. It is in this vein that I wish to draw attention to the importance of effective cooperation and the interdependence of the various arms of Parliament, the President, the Senate, and the House of Representatives. Honorable members of Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, it has been suggested that given the power exercised by the Prime Minister and the Cabinet in the Westminster model, a more accurate contemporary description of parliamentary government might well be cabinet or prime ministerial government. And yet the philosophy that informs the Westminster model of government, and which has provided the basis for our political institutions and norms, reflects the premise, according to Gerald Schmidt's 1998 in his book, The Opposition in a Parliamentary System. A delicate balance must be maintained between permitting elected governments to govern and legislate effectively, and ensuring that power is exercised with care and respect for minorities and dissenting views. The term delicate balance is significant. My predecessor, President George Maxwell Richards, has highlighted the fact that the government is accountable to the Parliament, and that, and I quote, oversight of the government on behalf of the public is Parliament's role, and not only a role only for the opposition. Now, it is the proper business and duty of an opposition to persuade the people that the approaches and policies that it advocates constitute an improvement on what is being proposed by the government of the day. but by devoting the required time and care to scrutinizing legislation and policies proposed by the government, and by offering constructive, informed criticism, not only the opposition, but all parliamentarians may be expected to cooperate in holding the government accountable, obliging it to defend and justify its policies and administrative decisions, and to reconsider, even amend proposals so that they are more in keeping with what may be perceived as the general good. Timely receipt of policy documents and draft bills is an imperative to facilitate both scrutiny and the counter-proposals of all parliamentarians. As the engine room for national political debate, Parliament then must be about the people's business, not the party's business. In other words, as leaders and lawmakers, parliamentarians of differing political persuasions are still expected to cooperate on matters that promote the development, security, and uplifting of the society. Once a delicate balance is struck, all parliamentarians may be seen to be cooperating, even collaborating, to ensure that bills passed are in the wider public interest. Indeed, I can think immediately of two areas in which such collaboration might be considered both feasible and timely. I refer first to the Caribbean Court of Justice, which is located in the heart of Port of Spain. We currently have legislation that gives jurisdiction to the International Criminal Court, to the Ad hoc International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, and the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda. Yet we have none that recognizes the final appellate jurisdiction of the CCJ in all areas of political, rather in all areas of litigation. Let there be a vote of conscience by secret ballot on whether it becomes the final court of appeal, or if as parliamentarians you lack the confidence to make that change, place it before the electorate by way of public referendum on the ballot paper. The upcoming local government elections in 2 months' time affords an ideal opportunity for doing this. We must no longer pussyfoot on this matter. The second issue, election campaign financing, is a veritable juggernaut that results in financiers arrogating political power onto themselves and thereby undermining the system of governance and democracy as we know it. Curiously, without exception, when political parties are in opposition, they call for transparency in campaign financing. Yet when in the seat of power, they conveniently neglect to address the issue. Madam, we must get really serious about this. It applies to all and sundry. The time has come that when we must bite the bullet of campaign financing reform and introduce appropriate measures for disclosure, reporting, and enforcement laws to ensure transparency and accountability in the management of the country's electoral system. This will certainly build citizens' confidence and enhance our system of democratic governance. The need for legislation, creating, for example, that has obtained in Jamaica for the last 10, 15 years of a contractor general to address the issue of tendering procedures must be considered. Additionally, for many years, there have been allegations of profligate enrichment of persons in authority. There have been complaints and observations for just as many years that the asset base of politicians is inconsistent with their income and tax returns. And there has been a hue and cry for the intervention of the Integrity Commission or the Fraud Squad? Why are we taking such a divergent route when we can wake up that sleeping giant called the Board of Inland Revenue? Rise from your slumber. Do what you are empowered to do. The empire of mafia boss Al Capone was destroyed by his conviction of the crime of tax evasion. Only yesterday, Silvio Berlusconi, the former Prime Minister of Italy, was convicted of tax evasion by the highest court of his land. Ever since I worked at the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, this has been my clarion call to persons in authority throughout Trinidad and Tobago. The rejoinder from those in authority at national fora was a jaundiced eye in my direction and a deafening silence. Crime continues to be the scourge of our society. If ever there was a time to cooperate and engage in realistic bipartisan methods, the time is now. For far too long, we have addressed the issue of crime with a focus on containment and not from a more holistic perspective. Legislation in the Parliament appears to deal figuratively with the bolted horse and not the horse in the stable. For instance, laws addressing parental responsibility must be considered to ensure that the child or the juvenile does not become a criminal because of the recalcitrant parent. Ladies and gentlemen, as I end this appeal for cooperation, I would also add that while meetings between the President and the Prime Minister may be regarded as by some as a mere exercise in formal reporting, they do provide an opportunity for the government to hear the views of the non-aligned in the decision-making process. And I dare say, this has been a successful exercise. I wish to turn my attention to the timing of presentations and the influence it exercises on the content of the parliamentary debates. What advantage is there in having issues debated at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning? How does this compare with the disadvantage of a severely reduced complement of representatives, coupled with the obvious exhaustion of those who have managed or who have been obliged to stay the course? Does this really augur well for the quality of parliamentary contributions? Should major decisions in the highest lawmaking body in the land be made when decision makers are often barely awake? Would it not be preferable to start parliamentary sessions earlier? It is highly unproductive to begin sessions at 1:30 p.m., subject to the vagaries of a heavy lunch and oppressive humidity. And I do hope that you all of you clap on this suggestion. As head of Parliament, I strongly suggest that Parliament begin at 8 a.m., as we all do in this country, to deal more efficiently and effectively with the nation's business. The earlier practice of having parliamentarians not read from a written prepared speech was intended to encourage them to respond to issues raised, rather than repeat at length arguments already explored or reintroduce points upon which there is already clear agreement. Debating is a skill. I must inform sometimes the uninformed. It is a skill that must be developed. It is indeed a sore diversion to observe parliamentarians reading speeches. It can lead to a lack of reasoned arguments and needless regurgitation. Perhaps in this regard, We need to employ mediation and alternative dispute resolution techniques to arrest this problem. Moreover, while the prepared speeches of MPs might score political points, they do not enable the listening public to scrutinize and to develop a critical understanding of national issues and how various pieces of legislation might affect them immediately and in the longer term. We are reminded also that as trustees of the nation's patrimony and resources, government's role is one of steward and not benefactor. The elected government of the day is not a benefactor of the nation's riches, but rather a facilitator of its distribution. The government of the day should ensure that the nation's resources are evenly and fairly distributed, not based on how one chooses to cast one's vote. It makes a mockery of a democracy if the exercise of my civic right attracts punishment, verbal flagellation, and marginalization. Regrettably, this has been the modus of successive governments. In keeping with this, I posed the same question in my address to the Tobago House of Assembly on April 26 this year, and I quote, "How often, as leaders, we see the need to protect the voiceless, the marginalized, and the dispossessed among us. And we see this strictly in terms of class and other social structures, conveniently forgetting that it equally applies in the arena of politics. Remember, where there is no representation, voices can be silenced. Mohandas Gandhi once said, 'I understand democracy is something that gives the weak the same chance as the strong.'" End of quote. Dear Assemblymen and women, you have the responsibility to ensure that no one in Tobago or Trinidad suffers from the vagaries of what I will term majority politics. Madam Prime Minister, Mr. Senate President, Mr. Speaker, honorable members all, I bring to my office the conviction that the Parliament must be an engine for positive change. And today, when the concept of civility seems to be everywhere under threat, the issue of dignity and decorum in parliamentary conduct is a matter of grave importance. This must not be lost on parliamentarians. Paragraph 7 of the Resolution 1903-2012 of the Council of Europe includes this interesting statement, and I quote, "Members' conduct is first and foremost a matter of personal belief and conviction. However, their behavior has to meet the expectations of those who place their confidence in an elected representative. The declared commitment to abide by the code of conduct depends from the onset of members' willingness to comply with it in good faith." End of quote. Every honorable member present today has taken the oath to bear true faith and allegiance to Trinidad and Tobago and to conscientiously and impartially discharge the responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. It is time to consider whether we are in contravention of the oath that we have taken, whether we have fallen short. Is our greatest allegiance to our country, or are there competing allegiances? Can we say that we are discharging our duties in a manner that is scrupulous, painstaking, principled, and governed by conscience? If we cannot, my fellow parliamentarians, then we have not done as we have sworn to do. We are in breach of our contract with the citizens of the nation. What our nation needs at this time is a return to honor. The challenge we have faced for many many years is a lack of personal credibility in our leaders and those in authority in every sphere. And where the leaders go, the nation follows. The question has been asked, what is left when honor is lost? Ladies and gentlemen, honor cannot be legislated. Honor does not only involve distinguishing between right and wrong. Honor demands that we eschew the very perception of wrongdoing and impropriety. A university education does not make one honorable. Wealth doesn't make one honorable. High rank or position does not make one honorable. Ladies and gentlemen, to be honorable requires that one commit to always doing the right thing because it is the right thing to do, regardless of the consequences and ignoring the potential rewards of doing otherwise. It is honor in leadership that will inspire confidence in our people and result in the stability of our nation. Our nation is depending on honorable leaders in Parliament to demonstrate their understanding that they are called both to lead and to serve. And it is in faithful and conscientious service that honor lies. Leadership must be inspired and inspiring. And parliamentarians, you sometimes fall short in the conduct you display in and out of Parliament. And this brings me to another aspect of parliamentary conduct. I am no stranger to fatigue, and no one enjoys well-placed pecan as much as I do, having been, of course, a former Calypsonian. But the rule that says members participating in debate must address the speaker is one way of discouraging direct, heated exchanges and forestalling the introduction of offensive, insulting, provocative, or threatening language. The impulse to engage in theatrics may well prove irresistible when one is in sight of television cameras. However, Ma'am, I'm speaking about conduct. However, indulging in forms of communication that denigrate and degrade not only compromise the substance of a debate, but more importantly, it signals to the larger public, and especially to our impressionable children, that crass behavior and disrespect are acceptable modes of conduct and communication. Wherever we find ourselves, our conduct should reflect the gravity of the responsibility entrusted to us. Today in our nation, there is a tendency to ignore or to downplay the respect that accrues to public offices. The person in the seat of the opposition leader, according to the Westminster form of government, is a prime minister in waiting. The prime minister of the day is the prime minister and ought to be addressed like this. The president of the Senate is the president of the Senate. The Speaker of the House is the Speaker of the House. But while it is the responsibility of a mature public to respect the offices of the land, it is also the responsibility of the office holders to earn the respect by their conduct while in office. 4.5 months ago, on assuming the presidency, I swore to preserve and defend the Constitution and the law and to devote myself to the service and well-being of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. There are elements of the preamble in our Constitution that have resonated with me and which have encouraged me, in addition to my constitutional duties, to embark on various initiatives aimed at helping to preserve, in particular, the spirit of our Constitution. One of these is the involvement of students as witnesses to important ceremonies and high-profile visits, as a means of bringing them into close contact with leaders both local and foreign. Lunch with the President initiative, for example, allows the nation's students the opportunity to engage with the presidency in a personal way, drawing them into the governance process and encouraging them to participate in the future development of Trinidad and Tobago by affirming their special value to the nation. For the same reason, I want to commend the outreach program of the Parliament, which includes school visits by the Senate President and Speaker of the House and tours of the Parliament. For far too long, ours has been a democracy practiced in ignorance. The Parliament outreach program is yet another means of sensitizing our young people to the importance and responsibility of Parliament and parliamentarians. In this regard, I wish to raise the issue of the constitutional provision that no person under the age of 25 can qualify to be a senator in the upper house. It is not about the size of the cranium of a 25-year-old. This is a dinosaur piece of legislation lacking in vision. In every generation, there comes along an exceptional human being under the age of 25, and there should be a constitutional provision for such an occurrence. The majority of parliamentarians here today will never get the opportunity to address the United Nations General Assembly. As 16-year-old Malala Yousafzai did in her defiant response to Taliban militants who attempted to take her life and destroy her dream of change and education. Young Malala stated, and I quote, "They thought that the bullets would silence us, but they failed. And out of that silence came thousands of voices. Nothing changed in my life except this. Weakness, fear, and hopelessness died. Strength, power, and courage were born. I am not here to speak in terms of personal revenge. I do not even hate the Talib who shot me. This is the compassion I have learned from Muhammad, the Prophet of Mercy, Jesus Christ, and Lord Buddha. This is the legacy of change I have inherited from Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, and Muhammad al-Jinnah. This is the philosophy of nonviolence that I have learned from Gandhi, Bacha Khan, and Mother Teresa." Honorable parliamentarians, and my dear judges of the Supreme Court of Trinidad and Tobago, I adhere fully to a philosophy that celebrates both the independence and the compassion of the human spirit. I will not therefore be burdened by the cronyism of the past and the present, or engage in a fossilized interpretation of my constitutional remit. I will not budge from engaging progressive change, nor will I be bullied by those who cannot cope with such change. The President's door will be open to provide access to those outside the corridors of power, influence, and contact, so that their existence and their desire to serve will not be limited by their seeming anonymity. I have a deep respect for institutional memory, and it has its place and relevance. But I also believe in creating lines of succession. And for far too long with consecutive governments, we have the same faces with the same old philosophies and the same tired ideas. We need a nation to engage our young intellectuals and not simply speak of the Singapore model, without ensuring that our best and brightest are in governance and in the Parliament, This president, maybe much to the chagrin of some, will not engage, figuratively speaking, in the recycling of empty plastic bottles. Before closing, allow me to refer to my inaugural address, in which I stated that there are powers which the president has and powers which he does not have. As a general rule in the exercise of his functions, the president is mandated to act in accordance with the advice of the cabinet or a minister acting under the general authority of the cabinet. However, this general rule does not always apply. May I repeat, this general rule does not always apply. At times, he is required to act in his discretion or after consultation with some other person or authority. Where the president is required to act in his own discretion, as for example in the appointment of the leader of the opposition, he may undoubtedly seek the counsel of any person who in his judgment could be of assistance. He may also choose not to consult with anyone at all. At the end of the day, the decision is his and his alone. Similarly, when the president is required to act after consultation with some person or authority, it is expected that he will engage in a meaningful process of consultation. And this is reflected in the rule omnia rite esse acta, the presumption of regularity. But again, having done so, the decision is his and his alone. On the other hand, where the president is required to act in accordance with the advice of the cabinet or a minister acting under the general authority of cabinet or some other personal authority, he is obliged to act on that advice. In these instances, the decision is not his, but that of the person on whose advice he must act. Nevertheless, the advice tendered to the president must itself be lawful. The president is not obliged to act in accordance with advice which is contrary to the law. That is illegal, unconstitutional, and or outside of the jurisdiction of the person tendering the advice. If it is against the law, he is duty bound to ignore any such advice. For example, the president would be obliged to reject the advice of the prime minister or the leader of the opposition to appoint someone to the post of senator who is not qualified under the Constitution to hold that position. Additionally, of course it does not apply here. Additionally, it is now commonplace that in appropriate circumstances, the president would delay implementation of the advice tendered to him in order that he may bring to the attention of the decision maker matters which, in his considered but restrained judgment, might have been overlooked. Two of my important constitutional duties as President of the Republic I have already exercised are the appointment of independent senators and members of the Integrity Commission under the Constitution and applicable legislation. The former appointment is made in my own discretion, while the latter is made by me after relevant consultation. Therefore, responsibilities for these choices rest entirely on my shoulders. In making appointments, such appointments, I will always be true to the oath, my oath of office, to conscientiously and impartially discharge the functions of President. In respect of such appointments, the buck stops with me, and these shoulders are broad. I saw a need to retool the composition of the independent senatorial bench. I have listened, and I have also observed for years the gaps in that composition. Where were the detractors in the last 3 years when there was no energy expert on the independent bench? No person who is differently abled for some 50 years, and no internationally recognized expert and academic in international finance. Where were you men and women of letters? of equal importance to my independent exercise of judgment in making the appointments are the powers vested in the Prime Minister and other ministers of government to advise me to appoint particular persons named by them to various positions. Such ministers bear the responsibility for such selections, although the actual instruments of appointment are under the hand of the President. I am simply upholding the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago and the law which I give effect to these decisions, which are lawfully to be made by others. It is important that the public understand this constitutional principle and the reason for it. I have no authority to refuse to appoint the persons put forward by the Prime Minister or the ministers, or in some instances, the leader of the opposition. It would be constitutionally incorrect for me to seek to do so. Just as selections properly made by me in my own judgment are constitutionally required to be accepted by others, likewise, as President, I am required to accept the choices made by others in accordance with the applicable constitutional or statutory provisions. I will make my own decisions when I am authorized by the Constitution or other law so to do. But in respect of matters where the authority to make the decision is vested in another person, I will follow the Constitution, the Convention, and the law and give effect to that decision. However, it is still quite proper, in my humble view, for a president to counsel and warn against any advice or recommendation he considers to be unwise. And this I have done with a measure of success. But the president cannot refuse to execute a lawful decision made by a minister or the leader of the opposition under the Constitution. As president, I understand this very clearly. And it is important that the public also recognize and appreciate the importance of this constitutional position. In this regard, I note many times, intellectual dishonesty often masquerades itself as critical analysis. Ladies and gentlemen, I have used this occasion of the opening of this fourth session of the 10th Parliament to again raise the issues of faithful service, personal honor, and probity in public affairs. A new session invariably gives rise in its own small way to the excitement of a new beginning. A new beginning informed at once by an awareness of a new and ongoing challenges and the understanding that meeting these challenges may require previously unplumbed levels of commitment to the ideal of nation building. Ladies and gentlemen, parliamentarians, always be patriots in this august assembly. I am confident, however, that we have the courage and the wisdom to treat with all challenges successfully. I wish you great health. I wish your families and friends good health and success. I ask you to remember your families and remember the sacrifices they make when you come to the Parliament and when you stay in the Parliament for very long hours. Remember that when you lose those moments, they are lost forever. I feel with the greatest of confidence that with this renewed vigor, with this renewed vision, that you can have a productive session, and I thank you for the courtesy of your kind attention. May God bless this Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you.
chamber and dismiss the guard of honor.
A marshal of the Parliament will lead the procession from the chamber to the parade on the right-hand road side of the waterfront complex.
So as we await the dismissal of the guard of honor, wow, what a speech, huh?
A very cohesive speech, I thought. If you looked at his opening statement, you listened to his opening statement, where he talked about the speech, speaking to the vision of good governance. We take out the word vision, we take out the words good governance, and I think everything spoke to that, his vision anyway, and his notion of good governance. So he started off by putting everything in context, I think, in terms of the Constitution and where he stands there, how our Parliament is set up. We talk about the Westminster model, so he talked about the functions, the role of the Prime Minister and Cabinet, and how those functions relate to what the President does and can do. So that when he talked about cooperation, starting off by talking about cooperation, to me that was him emphasizing a vision that he wanted the cooperation of the parties to work, because that to him would ensure good governance. And when he talked too about saying it's the people's business and not the party's business, I think that was very much appropriate. So in a way there was a spanking, equal opportunity spanking coming down here. And we can talk more about that, of course, after we see what happens out on Wrightson Road.
His Excellency, accompanied by the Chief of Defence Staff and followed by the aide de camp and the aide to the Chief of Defence Staff, proceeds to salute in days for the dismissal of the Guard of Honor. The President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives will then proceed to their position behind the salute in days.
Your Excellency, may I have your permission to dismiss the Guard of Honor?
Permission granted.
Thank you, Your Excellency. First.
Jason, that when we first impression of the address, we saw a very good, and as I had said earlier on, it's something that His Excellency is good at doing. He relates very well to the young, and the young know that you need to get to the point, and he does that most times. So after he explained what's the business of the government, what's the business of the opposition, then he would come down to it and say that if we want to do the people's business and not the party's business, we have to cooperate. You have to cooperate. And that, to me, in a nutshell, was a lesson. And all through his address, there were lessons, ones that could be digested very easily and very quickly. So that's why I say that a lot of it, to me, was very much to the point. Of course, he speaks in a medium-paced tempo, which is not what we're accustomed to. So in this case, it added to, I think, the feeling of urgency that this is something that we need to not wait on, not hesitate with. And it was in keeping with the theme of what he was saying. Why has it taken so long, for example, to get the Caribbean Court of Justice going for our jurisdiction, for Trinidad and Tobago? And there were a lot of ad-lib points during this address, which to me, again, emphasize what he was saying, that debating is important. When he talked about the members of parliament not reading from speeches, because oftentimes you miss that opportunity for reasoned argument, this is a case in point. When you talk to an audience, as he did, and you see that there are certain points where you perhaps pick up that the audience is letting it slide, he will then emphasize through examples and calling you to book. You often heard him ad-lib when you hear him say, "Madam, the time has come when you must bite the bullet." And when he was doing that, he was talking about campaign financing, as I said earlier on. Issues that are in the forefront of public perception and attention right now, and campaign financing certainly is one of them, if not, up there tied with, say, crime, which is definitely up there as well. We've just come out of a campaign where, for anybody on the street, you recognize that much money was spent. And therefore, it's something that I think the president felt he had to address. And not only that, to show that you don't fiddle while Rome burns, so to speak. Who is he talking to? He's talking to the people who are responsible for good governance. He's talking about the vision for good governance. The vision has to be that you have to move on certain issues. So he talked about, or gave his ideas as to what could be done to get the Caribbean Court of Justice going in this Trinidad and Tobago. His suggestion was you might have secret ballot. That's right. Or you might put it to the forefront of your right in local government elections. Yeah. Again, he's talking about haste, moving with speed and tempo. And to me, again, it is contrasting with the thought and the talk of a dinosaur kind of thing that he spoke about a bit later on. So this is why I say, to me, it was well planned, well constructed, this thing, because you have reference to ideas throughout the speech. You couldn't think that, okay, he had part one and part two, and part one didn't refer to part two and couldn't reference. Not at all. I thought that in the speech it was very cohesive, well pulled together once you understand what his main theme was. Vision of good governance, honor, cooperation, respect. And those were the main words that were used, and the theme that was kept throughout. So when he waited for applause, he's talking about conduct, he's talking about getting things going differently.
I think one of the things that the time when he waited for applause, was it at the start time of parliamentary sittings, and they should begin at 8 a.m. he suggested.
Well, he says, as we all do, and I'm sure many were looking around and said, I don't know, 8. But again, he's talking about in general what are normal working hours, and why should you not put the people's business at the forefront? Again, good governance. He pointed out that if you start a session at 1:30 and you go till 2 in the morning or 3 in the morning, how fresh can you be? How much clear thinking can there be when you debate that? I like the bit when he brought in, again referring to corruption or perceived corruption, and complaints of corruption, the business of getting the Board of Inland Revenue to get in there. Now, some might think, oh, well, you know, the president shouldn't be the one to have to decide how we handle these topics, but he is pointing out that he does. And that, again, good governance, and he's a member of Parliament, this is the place where we deal with good governance, and the suggestions are there. So that was interesting as well, where he's sort of appealing to folks, once again, to move on certain issues, and that's what I get throughout of it. A call, a clarion call to move on issues, move on the CCJ, move on this business of getting the campaign financing business all together, move with cooperation on the issues of crime. So again, he's asking for bipartisan methods, and he said again, the time is now. So that's why sprinkled throughout it, we get that feeling of an impatience.
I wrote one of a quote from him: "I will not budge from engaging in progressive change." So that all falls in place with the theme of the entire discussion.
Change. Get out of outmoded thinking. Yes, there's a place for institutional memory, but at the same time, you have to move along or be, you know, left behind. And I think, again, he's a young president, and he brings not only the fact that he's a young president, but the fact that he deals with young people all the time. He understands, you know, the pace at which we have to move in order for the young to continue to be engaged with us. And that's why I like the bit where he brought in, you know, the business of the
president.
That's right, and the Parliament's
outreach program.
Yeah, which is kudos to the Parliament.
Well, let me put in a shameless plug here. Therefore, tomorrow we shall in fact begin broadcasting the first of those school outreach programs, the one that took place at Queen's Royal College. We go back.
Papers.
The Honorable Leader of the House.
Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to lay on the table the address of His Excellency the President on the occasion of the opening of the 4th session of the 10th Parliament of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that His Excellency's address be printed as a House paper.
Honorable members, the question is that the address by His Excellency the President on the occasion of the opening of the 4th session of the 10th Parliament of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago be printed as a House paper. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it.
Statements by ministers.
The Honorable Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of the government, I thank you for this opportunity to address this Honourable House at the start of the 4th session of the 10th Parliament. I also offer my thanks and congratulations to His Excellency, President Anthony Thomas Aquinas Carmona, on his insightful and thought-provoking maiden speech at this ceremonial opening of the Parliament. Honourable Speaker, His Excellency reminded us of our duties and responsibilities to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and has challenged us to truly become advocates on behalf of the people. Mr. Speaker, as we move into this 4th session of the 10th Parliament, following what was perhaps one of the most strongly contested by-elections in this country's history, what we witnessed over the past weeks was, in my respectful view, democracy in action. It's a tribute to our nation's founding fathers who enshrined in our Constitution the rights that our people demonstrated and the freedom to join a party of their choice and elect the person they consider best qualified to represent them in this august chamber. And so I take this opportunity to welcome back to the Parliament, a member for Chaguanas West. The Honourable Member is no stranger to this House. We on this side look forward to positive contributions and support from him as the Parliament continues its business. Mr. Speaker, we are operating under the very watchful gaze of a discerning and demanding public. We are representatives of the people, and we are here to deal with the people's business. We accept our responsibility as servants of the people to conduct the affairs of state without fear or favour, malice or ill will. We accept our responsibilities with a clear understanding that national interests and the national good must take precedence over partisan and individual interests. Mr. Speaker, in treating with these national interests, I wish to briefly put before this House an idea of our legislative agenda for this session. We MPs must look after the people of this country, and so during this term, we plan to implement certain measures to deal with crime. Whilst the police have been reporting low levels of serious crime, we feel that we can do more. We notice the lawlessness in the country, and just this week, rival gangs were shooting up the streets in East Port of Spain in broad daylight, having little or no regard for human life. We need to have the anti-gang law enforced, I say, Mr. Speaker, so as to deal with this increasing scourge in the country. During this parliamentary term, I expect the Honourable Attorney General to find additional ways to deal with the crime problem. It would seem that despite the measures already in place to deal with road safety, more needs to be done. Motorists continue to speed with impunity. Drivers continue to speak on cell phones whilst driving, and so endangering the lives of others. And so we see many lawbreakers. As we enter another parliamentary session, I have asked the Minister of National Security and the Minister of Transport to take on the task of tackling this problem on the roads. Too many persons, especially young ones, are dying from either speeding or too much alcohol or from just being weary. Just last week, Cabinet was asked to agree to the installation of speed trap cameras across the country to assist in reducing carnage on the roads. Mr. Speaker, I'm advised that these cameras function well in the US and the UK with very great success. Another issue we're very concerned with is that of healthcare, and so we intend to step up in the coming year. We have already agreed to the construction of several hospitals, and only last week we announced that a healthcare centre will be erected in Felicity. Mr. Speaker, members of the public need to access healthcare from any part of the country. It's our wish that this would become a reality soon. Also, Mr. Speaker, for the agenda, the issue of constitutional reform remains one of the pledges that all MPs who were elected under the partnership ticket had subscribed to. Key amongst these were the ideas of fixed election dates, term limits for the Prime Minister, and 3, the right of recall for MPs. We remain committed to deliver on these promises as we begin this 4th session of the 10th Parliament of our Republic. The Honourable Minister of Legal Affairs spearheaded the consultations on constitutional reform throughout TNT, and we await the report from that committee. My government intends to deliver on these promises before the next general election is held, and I look forward to the support of parliamentary colleagues on all sides to help us deliver on these. The coming session is expected to be hectic. There are a number of matters expected to be laid before this Honourable House. I take a moment to just mention a few of these. One is the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Property Bill. This bill seeks to provide for public procurement and disposal of public property in accordance with the principle of good governance, namely accountability, transparency, and value for money. Another bill that we intend to lay in this session is a Jury Amendment Bill, which seeks to address some of the major challenges to the jury system to improve its efficiency. This bill would create offences of juror misconduct and juror interference, restrict the publication of personal information of jurors, empower a judge to separate a jury after they retire, and to provide for special juries in complex fraud matters. Also on our agenda is the Insurance Bill 2013, which seeks to provide a new framework for the insurance industry and to continue to provide for the regulation of privately administered pension fund plans. Mr. Speaker, I thank you for this opportunity, and in closing, I said this year we were honored to celebrate the 40th anniversary of the Treaty of Chaguaramas, establishing the CARICOM. As chair of the CARICOM, it was our privilege to be part of the reenactment of that historic beginning during the annual Heads of Government Conference, and to recommit to our regional states our pledge to honor the tenets of good governance for all of our people. Mr. Speaker, I thank you very much.
The Honourable Leader of the House.
Mr. Speaker, there being no other business, I beg to move that this House do now adjourn to a date and a time to be fixed.
Before putting the question to the House for the adjournment, I would like to invite the Honourable Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition to convey brief emancipation and Eid greetings to the nation. I call on the Honourable Prime Minister.
Honourable Speaker, with your leave, our Minister of Arts and Multiculturalism.
The Honourable Minister of Arts and Multiculturalism, could you come forward, sir?
God is love. Mr. Speaker, we start this fourth session of the 10th Parliament in the middle of the Emancipation holiday, which we celebrated yesterday, and a week before the observance of Eid al-Fitr. These celebrations reflect the diversity of our country and exemplify the unity that we continue to enjoy in Trinidad and Tobago. In our annual commemoration of Emancipation Day, we recall the struggles and celebrate the triumphs of the ancestors of our African brothers and sisters, and pay tribute to their strength, perseverance, and resilience. It is a time when we honor the achievements of their descendants, whose traditions have become an integral part of the rich cultural mosaic that has made us a model among the community of nations. Today, nearly 2 centuries later, still there are some pockets of human bondage, and this remains a scourge that all freedom-loving people must fight to eliminate. For tens of thousands worldwide, slavery remains very much alive. We are fortunate to live in a country that cherishes and protects freedoms and individual rights. As citizens, we must all share in the responsibility to recognize, to appreciate, preserve our freedom for which our ancestors fought. Someone says the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. So we must never become complacent and let our guard down to open the door for those who do not respect freedom, as happened before, as some tried to trample on the rights approximately 23 years ago. In 1990, our protective forces stood up and defended our freedom, and today we offer our eternal thanks and gratitude for their valiant efforts to defend our democracy. This year marked the 175th anniversary since the freeing of the slaves in 1838. There was much celebration throughout the country yesterday as thousands walked the streets of Port of Spain to the Queen's Park Savannah. I take this opportunity also to extend Eid al-Fitr greetings to our Muslim sisters and brothers on behalf of the government and the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Eid al-Fitr marks the end of the holy month of Ramadan, which is an annual period of fasting that cleanses the body and the mind to demonstrate submission to God, to keep the mind focused on spiritual plane. The Eid holiday will be celebrated here in Trinidad on Friday, August the 9th. It is my fervent prayer that Almighty God, Almighty Allah, will continue to shower blessings of peace, prosperity, and happiness to all. Mr. Speaker, I thank you.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to speak for those of us on this side, and allowing me the opportunity to join with my colleagues on the other side at this time of year, where we acknowledge 2 events which are important to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Speaker, at this time, we in Trinidad and Tobago acknowledge emancipation and celebrate with a holiday. And it's a good time to reflect, Mr. Speaker, that slavery out of Africa is nothing new. Slavery predated the slave trade that brought our ancestors to the Western world. But there were two things that made the African slaves so different. It was the scale of the event, the large numbers of people who were transposed from their comfort in their continent, and, Mr. Speaker, the unspeakable brutality that was meted out to them here in these islands. And while those persons who left were not here today, slavery out of Africa, our kind of experience, still carries a burden, because African slavery carried a mark of color. They were black people. And whereas the slaves of Asia, of the Middle East, and Europe, whenever they were freed, Mr. Speaker, they could easily have assimilated into their communities and not be identified for who they were. African slaves, by virtue of their color, continue in one way or the other to experience the hardships and the recognition and discrimination of color in Europe, in North America, in South America, and elsewhere in the world. So in a way, Mr. Speaker, as we acknowledge emancipation, we must also acknowledge that the problem has not ended. And Mr. Speaker, in Trinidad and Tobago, we today have seen the rise of a movement joining with the rest of the world, requesting that some kind of recognition be given to persons who continue to suffer the stamp of that experience of our ancestors. It might be a good time, Mr. Speaker, as we pay tribute and acknowledge our own origins, for the government to pay attention to our own actions here in Trinidad and Tobago, which would recognize that the presence of and the contribution of the slaves and those who are descendants of slaves could feel and acknowledge emancipation in the way that the state's recognition of their rights and their opportunities are treated. So, Mr. Speaker, Trinidad and Tobago is viewed as a melting pot where many, many different types of persons have come here, and we are all building a nation. And as we acknowledge the persons and citizens who claim ancestry out of Africa, we recognize our responsibility to be one people building one nation. So today I want to extend greetings on our behalf to all of Trinidad and Tobago and ask us to acknowledge the significance, the full extent of that significance of emancipation of all of us. And as we continue, Mr. Speaker, to acknowledge the other components of our national makeup, I take the opportunity on behalf of all of us in this House, especially those of my side, to recognize Eid al-Fitr, which is coming up in a few days' time, where the Muslim community will have completed the fast, and that preparation for going forward in greater communion with the Spirit and to be better citizens as a result of the fast and of that commitment to serve one another and to be a brother's keeper. So again, I want to say on behalf of all of us to the Muslim community, Eid Mubarak. Thank you.
Honorable members, I wish to join the members of the House of Representatives in offering Emancipation Day greetings to the people of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Yesterday, the nation celebrated Emancipation Day 2013. In fact, it marked the 175th anniversary of emancipation in the English-speaking Caribbean. Since the day was declared a national holiday, Emancipation Day celebrations have grown into a national festival with various activities including art, culture, business, and entertainment. However, emancipation means more than a day of celebration and festivities. It represents the day in history, August 1st, 1838, when African enslaved persons were declared free. There is much for our nation to learn from the observance of such a day. Emancipation is a celebration of the strength of the human spirit. The day should be a time of reflection, a reflection on how far we have progressed and achieved as a nation since then. Nonetheless, one often wonders whether we have truly experienced emancipation in all its facets. Have we been emancipated mentally, for example? The end of enslavement did not signal an end of suffering. However, it was a step in the right direction for human rights and dignity. It is paramount that we safeguard the freedoms we enjoy today, freedoms which we fought hard to achieve. Indeed, we must embrace our past, but look to our future. Now is not a time for any form of divisiveness. Our growth and development depends on us forging ahead together as one people and nation. I would like us to take time to reflect on a very important quote by the great Nelson Mandela, and I quote, "To be free is not merely to cast off one's chains, but to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others." On behalf of the Office of the Parliament, I join with the government and the opposition in offering Emancipation Day greetings to the people of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Happy Emancipation. I also wish to echo the sentiments that have been expressed by the members of this Honorable House in extending greetings to the Muslim community and the nation on the celebration of Eid al-Fitr, which will be celebrated on Friday, August the 9th, 2013. Eid al-Fitr, also known as Festival of the Breaking of the Fast, is one of the most widely celebrated festivals in the Islamic calendar. It occurs after the sighting of the new crescent moon, which signals the end of the month of Ramadan, the holy month of fasting. As we join with our Muslim brothers and sisters in observing this auspicious occasion, let us not forget the underlying messages of spirituality, forgiveness, humility, unity, and brotherhood. I wish you all a happy and holy Eid. Eid Mubarak. Honorable members, the question is that this House do now adjourn to a date to be fixed. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it. This House now stands adjourned to a date to be fixed.